Hi, I'm Jimmy McCoy, and this is an overview of how I completely redesigned a television station. Now, when I first came into UNT's public access station as programming director, it had been running for 20 years as a tape-to-tape operation for 10 hours a day. And now, for the first time in its history, it was running on a file server 24/7. And nobody knew what to do with it.
Week after week, it was nothing but random programming at random times. Whatever promos there were barely even used our logo. And there weren't even bumps to let the audience know what was coming up later.
We needed a total overhaul to create a station identity, and good graphic design was going to be the key to everything. Needless to say, we had a massive amount of work ahead of us. The challenge?
There was no graphics or programming team to help, and no money to bring anybody else on board. Whatever was going to happen had to be done by me and me alone. We only had one computer running the required software, and oh yeah, there were barely 6 months in which to accomplish it all. The first thing to do was look at other networks and see how they presented themselves. I recorded hours and hours of promos, bumpers, and donuts to see how networks branded themselves. Some of the things I liked best from what I saw were the networks that kept it simple. Minimalism was something that looked good and could be easily templated. That way it wouldn't take an expert to update, and we could use it to train our students.
Once I had done considerable research, the next step was to figure a few things out about ourselves. What united all of our content to base an image off of? I mean, most networks like Sci-Fi or Comedy Central carried a single genre of programming. But our content was completely diverse, ranging from news, politics, science fiction, comedy, and more.
In fact, there were over 20 different genres in over 150 programs that came through our doors in 2 decades. However, after a lot of head scratching, there was one thing that could link everything together, and it was right under our feet.
School! I mean, after all, we were a university television station. So we decided to incorporate college life and education into our theme. Our goal was to entertain as well as offer educational programming to a younger audience. Now, every network revolves around a good color scheme, so we decided to start with our university green.
But we didn't want to be a clone of our university branding, so we changed the Kelly green to a vibrant, bright yellow green. Now for the logo. One thing I decided to do was make it larger than life. I realized that the audience doesn't have to see the entire thing for it to have an impact. If it's bigger than the screen itself, it starts to have a real presence. Now we also needed an area to display information, so a white bar was added with a black border. Now font was going to be extremely important, since we would need to choose one early on and apply it to everything in order to have cohesion. So I chose a font called Avant-Garde. It was a smooth sans serif font with personality and a professional appeal. And since it was already in our logo, I created a play between no caps and all caps just to give it a little extra life. But it was still missing something at this point, so the background was given a texture just to give it some pizzazz. But what about all the other programs I mentioned before? These were all grouped into 6 main categories, and each category was given a variation on the main theme. Primetime, which featured student programming currently in production at UNT, held the standard green. The morning block, featuring educational programming, was given sunny yellow. Saturday was reserved for NTTV Archives, which was a vast collection of movies and short films from yesteryear. This was given a blue, scratchy film look. And Sundays held marathons for various programs and was set to red with a multi-block background. However, there were 2 problem areas. We had a late-night block called Midnight Snack, which needed a darker look. So some things were switched. The bar became darker and given a silky purple background to boost the image of nighttime programming. The big problem child, though, was our retro block. This held all of our programming from the 80s. It needed to follow the pattern of other designs, but a major theme found in 80s graphics was chaos. Now I scoured the internet for samples of 80s graphic designs. I went through several ideas and realized a few things along the way. Color was going to be very important to the scheme. I decided to stick to purple, pink, blue, and green. Using these colors, I managed to pull off an image of controlled chaos, where at one angle it seemed like everything was just slapped together, but another it was very clean cut.
So that was it.
we had our image. But now we were faced with a bigger problem. How do we use that image to promote our content? Now remember, for the first time in the history of the station, we had regular programs at regular times. We needed a way to get the date and time information for all those programs heavily promoted, and we only had a few months in which to do it. So, one of the first things we did was create freeze frames, which would be placed at the end of every commercial break. These would carry the image of the block they were in and feature a still image of the program it was promoting, as well as the date and time information. Hundreds of these were made and placed into programming. Another initiative was to create slices, which was a simple promo featuring a 30 or 60-second clip of a show branded with the image of the block in which it was presented. Then we had a slew of original and creative promos which were made by students that we didn't really want to throw away, but they needed to fit our scheme of branding. The solution applied here was to keep the original but re-tag the end with a standard bumper. Several new and original promos were made for the station and various shows which ended up carrying this branding. I also had to work with the marketing department to use this image in flyers and signage, for which several base templates were used to make consistently new and eye-catching designs.
So there it is, one of the biggest projects I've ever attempted in my life. And I'm only just getting warmed up. Who knows what I'm capable of? Just remember, if I did it once, I can do it again.